we're going to turn to the confirmation hearing of Tulsi Gabbard, who is a former Democrat, but left the party after she was smeared for calling out the corruption of the DNC and rigging the primary in 2016 against Bernie Sanders. She was also smeared for some of her views on foreign policy with people, including Hillary Clinton, calling her a Russian asset. And since then, she's rebranded, she's joined MAGA, and Trump has tapped her to oversee the nation's intelligence agencies. And to get that nomination, Tulsi Gabbard has abandoned some of her past views. She used to speak, and I think for Washington's standards, a pretty fair-minded way about Palestine. Since then, she's become an arch-Zionist, although always her record on that was a little bit checkered. Yeah. She was hanging out with Shmuley Boteach a long time ago. But in more recent years, when she was running for the Democratic Party nomination, I thought she was saying some decent things when it comes to Palestine, but that's no more. She's abandoned that. But she's kept to some of her views that have gotten her a lot of detractors when it comes to foreign policy, including criticizing the proxy wars in Syria and Ukraine, which in Washington, if you want to be part of the intelligence establishment, you simply cannot do, because these are major foreign wars that the U.S. has been fueling for a very, very long time. And people in power on both parties have not liked the things that she's been saying. And one of them, which she pointed out in her opening statement, and I think this just shows the bankruptcy of Democrats in some of their foreign policy views, is pointing out that in Syria, the U.S. supported an insurgency that it knew was dominated by al-Qaeda.
As Jake Sullivan said to Hillary Clinton, quote, al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. Well, Syria is now controlled by an al-Qaeda offshoot.
So how often do you ever hear that mentioned in a congressional setting? Someone acknowledging that the U.S. supported an al-Qaeda dominated insurgency to the point where Jake Sullivan wrote, al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. And it's for comments like that that Tulsi Gabbard attracts so much hostility from both parties, but now especially Democrats, because the dirty war in Syria, that was their project. It began under Obama, although the Bush administration set the roots for it. And so Tulsi Gabbard said that. And comments like this have made some strong enemies for Tulsi Gabbard on the Democratic side. Among them, Michael Bennet, who was yelling at Tulsi Gabbard throughout her confirmation hearing, multiple times asking Tulsi Gabbard to declare that Edward Snowden, the NSA whistleblower, is a traitor. And Tulsi Gabbard, who previously called for pardoning Snowden, would not oblige. And he was very, very livid about that. He also was very livid that Tulsi Gabbard has criticized U.S. policy in Ukraine and has said that the U.S. could have helped avoid the war by addressing Russian security concerns. So here's Michael Bennet taking Tulsi Gabbard to task for daring to say that the U.S. helped provoke the Ukraine war.
February 23rd, 2022, at the very moment that Russian tanks were rolling across the peaceful border of Ukraine for the first time, you tweeted at 11:30 p.m. your time, this war and suffering could have easily been avoided if Biden administration / NATO had simply acknowledged Russia's legitimate security concerns regarding Ukraine's becoming a member of NATO. Did you say that, yes or no?
I believe you're reading my tweet, Senator.
Yes is the answer.
So Michael Bennet is indignant that Tulsi Gabbard tweeted, and he really emphasized that, you tweeted this, how dare you? That
at 11:30 p.m.
At 11:30 p.m. that Russia had legitimate security concerns. How dare someone say that? He was so upset by this that in his closing remarks, he focused on it again.
Can't we do better than somebody who doesn't believe in 702? Can't we believe that somebody who can't answer whether Snowden was a traitor 5 times today, who made excuses for Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the first time that I'm aware of any American official has done that? I'm questioning her judgment. That's the issue that's at stake here.
So let me correct Senator Bennet here, where he says this is the first time I believe an American official has ever said that Russia has legitimate security concerns, and how dare Tulsi Gabbard? That's not true. One of the people who's made this point before Tulsi Gabbard is Charles Kupchan. He is a former senior official on Barack Obama's National Security Council. Barack Obama, a fellow Democrat, just like Michael Bennet. And listen to what Charles Kupchan said, exactly sounding like Tulsi Gabbard. Russia has legitimate security concerns about NATO setting up shop on the other side of its 1,000-mile-plus border with Ukraine. NATO may be a defensive alliance, but it brings to bear aggregate military power that Moscow understandably does not want parked near its territory. So Tulsi Gabbard is far from the first to acknowledge what's obvious to anybody with their eyes open, that, yeah, Russia does have legitimate security concerns, just as the U.S. would have legitimate security concerns if Russia was trying to bring Mexico or Canada into a hostile military alliance. And Charles Kupchan said there exactly what Tulsi Gabbard said. But Michael Bennet, who is a part of this Democratic trend of just being fully aligned with neocons who start in the Republican Party under the Bush administration in that camp, he can't process that thought and had a total freak out about it today. Another issue that engendered a freak out was Tulsi Gabbard being skeptical of allegations that the former Syrian government under Assad used chemical weapons. And Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona pressed Tulsi Gabbard on that.
Can you explain to me then why you doubted the intelligence community's conclusions in these two cases, Duma and Kanche Kun, but not the others? And please be specific.
These two cases were being looked at to be used as a pretext for major military movement. And my fear was a repeat of the deployment of another 500,000 soldiers like we saw in Iraq towards what was the Obama administration's goal, which was regime change in Syria. The question specifically that I raised around these two came about because there were two reasons. One, that assessment was made with high confidence and low information. The information that they had came from those on the ground in an al-Qaeda controlled area and therefore were al-Qaeda linked sources. And there was conflicting information that came from the UN's Office on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons inspectors, as well as an MIT professor, Ted Postel,
So I
who
want to
looked
talk about
at
him
these
for a
extensively.
second.
So what we heard there is, for the first time in a formal U.S. government setting, somebody mentioning the OPCW whistleblowers who challenged the cover-up of their investigation in Duma, one of the cases Gabbard's talking about, because their findings undermined the allegation lodged by the Trump administration that Syria committed a chemical attack in Duma, and those findings were censored. And this is a story I've covered extensively. It's based on leaked OPCW documents. This is the first time that I can recall that's ever been mentioned in a formal U.S. government setting. So this is a milestone for accountability, because finally the OPCW whistleblowers and their leaks are being acknowledged. And Senator Mark Kelly tried to make this an issue at the hearing, but he did not have a rebuttal for Tulsi Gabbard repeatedly mentioning the OPCW whistleblowers, because they're right. And that's why they get ignored by people like Mark Kelly and the entire U.S. media, who never even acknowledge the OPCW whistleblowers' existence, because the whistleblowers and the leaks that contain evidence of what actually was found in Duma undermine this widespread narrative, which is used to justify military strikes on Syria and murderous sanctions. They undermine the narrative that Assad used chemical weapons in Duma. And that's why our reliable media stenographers go along with it. So Tulsi Gabbard pierced that propaganda bubble, and Mark Kelly had no response to it. So I thought that was a really important moment. And he's also, by the way, repeating a mistake. He says that Tulsi Gabbard has challenged U.S. intelligence assessments. In all the cases where Tulsi Gabbard has raised questions about U.S. allegations that Assad used chemical weapons, the intelligence community has never released a formal assessment that makes the case. The White House has put out press releases that they say is based on U.S. intelligence, but these documents don't have the imprint of U.S. intelligence. The first one was put out by Ben Rhodes, who was a creative writing MFA under Obama, and Rhodes later admitted to feeling anxiety writing it. And that's because the intelligence community refused to put out their own assessment accusing Assad, because James Clapper, whose job Tulsi Gabbard is now up for, went to Obama and said, the case against Assad is not a slam dunk, which was a deliberate reference to the Iraq WMD hoax. So Mark Kelly is basically challenging and excoriating Tulsi Gabbard, not for questioning even U.S. intelligence, but for questioning White House press releases written by non-intelligence officials trying to make the case for bombing Syria. And because Tulsi Gabbard didn't go along with that, and in fact echoed the position of James Clapper when he refused to put the intelligence community's name on a statement accusing Assad, now she's being pilloried. But do we want people who are blindly believing pro-war claims or applying proper skepticism? And so personally, I think Tulsi Gabbard's skepticism is a virtue, but not a liability.
So it sounds like Michael Bennet needs to be grilled, just like he grilled Tulsi Gabbard. He should be asked, is it true that you said that Tulsi Gabbard was the first person to say that Vladimir Putin had legitimate security concerns vis-a-vis NATO. He should be grilled on that, and they should read out like the transcript and also the time he said it, because apparently that's important. Like that she tweeted out at 11:30. I wonder if he's trying to link her to Trump, because I guess Trump was famous. Trump and Neera Tanden were famous for their late night tweets. And similarly, it seems like the claim that someone was the first to do something was not Tulsi Gabbard when it came to understanding Russia's security concerns. It perhaps was Tulsi Gabbard in bringing up the OPCW.
That's correct. That was a landmark moment. Again, no one's ever done that before. If you read any media account of the issue of Syria, chemical weapons, OPCW, they never, ever acknowledge OPCW whistleblowers, because acknowledging their existence means you have to contend with their findings, which were censored. And that's just too damning to the narrative that Syria used chemical weapons in Duma. So therefore, they just get ignored. It's the most whitewashed Orwellian story I've ever seen. It's just, and it persists after all these years. Like, we know now that the Iraq WMD hoax is a hoax, but on the issue of Syria chemical weapons, you would not know that the world's top chemical weapons watchdog, if you read the New York Times or Washington Post or watched CNN or MSNBC, you would not know that whistleblowers challenged the cover-up of their investigation after it undermined the claim that Assad used chemical weapons in Duma.